Episode of Live with Littledata. I'm Edward Upton, and I'm joined today with Nick from Charl. Welcome, Nick.
Hello, thanks for having me, Ed.
So, I wanted to have a bit of a conversation about retention versus acquisition today. I feel like I've heard a lot of this the last few months. I was actually at an event last night in London, and the panel was discussing about how you can improve your customer experience, retain customers, and it was almost like not even considered that you might actually have to acquire new customers. It's like we'll just focus 100% on retention, and it'll be great. Now, as hopefully we agree, retention has a place, but I wanted to just sort of talk about, I guess the first thing is, is it has it been overdone? People, there's definitely been a switch to retention marketing, or seems to be like people pushing a lot more as a strategy. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting topic because as you said, it's definitely got its place, right?
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. If you're putting people into the pool of people that might buy from you, you want them to buy again, and you want them to stay part of your kind of your brand journey. And I personally think this all came from when the privacy changes came in and it was harder to acquire, more expensive. Everyone was like, "What do we do? What's the solution?" And I think everybody kind of went, yes, the solution to this problem is just to retain the people we're getting and the people we've already got.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure it's the big fix, but it's definitely beneficial and something that we should be thinking about.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I mean, obviously, this goes down well with every finance director, because it's like, hey, we can just take a big line to a lot of our paid ad spend, and we'll still grow. And yes, we'll have to spend a bit of money on some of the tools like Klaviyo and stuff, but it ultimately be a lot cheaper than giving it all to Google and Meta. So I get the appeal, but as you say, at some point you probably top out what you can get from just retaining customers.
Yeah, definitely. I think we have to remember that at every step of anything we do with customers online, you're going to lose most of them along that journey. Average conversion rate sits anywhere between 1% and 5%, probably. I wouldn't anywhere near 5% with the larger enterprise level brands in my experience. But so we have to remember that we're going to lose people at every single step. So if you think that we've got 1,000 people in a sample, and we think, and now suddenly that's halved because of acquisition troubles, that we can then put that another 500 back into the pot from mysteriously keeping people. I think that expectation probably is misaligned.
Yeah.
But if actually we might be able to improve our revenues by, I don't know, 10% because we're keeping a few more people in that pool of people, then your expectations are probably more realistic to what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So there is more most brands can squeeze from retention. Definitely some basics you should be doing, but I guess what you're saying is there's an upper limit in terms of ultimate revenue growth of what you might achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. I think because ultimately, I'm not an anti-retention person. I love it, and we do loads of work around that here at the agency, whether it's email, on site, etc. But ultimately, to grow a business, you need to get more customers. That is the fundamentals of any business, whether it's e-commerce or not. Yes, of course, it's absolutely right to focus on trying to get the people you've already engaged with before or might have seen you to get them more driven and more excited about coming to see you. But it's not. We see it a lot. It's like everyone's like, retention, this is what you need to be focusing on in 2024. It's like, hang on a minute. So you're telling me that I shouldn't then focus on acquisition? Because in my view, that is also absolutely absurd and ridiculous because they both play their part. But ultimately, if we take it very much back to fundamentals, you need new customers in your funnel to be able to keep growing business. And you need more of them if you want to grow, right? And retaining customers is not going to grow the number of customers in the long term, really.
Yeah, that's right. And I've been talking about this a lot the last week because we're doing, we just launched a new integration with Klaviyo. I'll talk a bit more about that later, but looking at kind of, how you might mainly come in cars. And the math looks like this, like, about on the average on Shopify's benchmarks, about 6% of people add to cart, and maybe 3% of those get to the second step of the checkout, which is basically when they sort of identify themselves and might give their email to them. So if you can, and quite a lot of those those people that drop out, so half people drop out, quite a lot of them are not marketable by email or SMS because you don't have their contact details. So you absolutely can boost the abandoned cart flows that you have, and with Littledata we do that through better identifying customers, and that means that there's basically a better signal for those flows to trigger on, which means you might double or triple your kind of boosting those. But the caveat is the boost is only ever going to be, that your abandoned cart flows might generate, 10 to 20% of your revenue overall on email, and email marketing overall might drive 10 to 20% of your revenue. So the kind of, improving retention is a kind of 5% strategy. It's not that you shouldn't do it, but it ain't going to drive your sales by 50%.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly right. And I think I think that's the problem that we're facing at the moment, is that rightfully so, lots of this amazing new tech that we're seeing that allows us to retain more customers are pushing the big retention flag, right? We're waving those retention strategies, but actually, what are we actually communicating? Because the topic of this conversation we're having today is acquisition versus retention. But when did it ever become something that they're against one another?
Yeah.
I would also argue that a lot of retention strategies could be actually bundled in with an acquisition strategy, because we always think an acquisition strategy is paying money to be seen by new people, so hopefully they come on the site and buy something. But actually, I would probably go a step further and say that acquiring a customer, not a visitor, is actually the full leg of the journey. It's spending money to get seen by people, them landing on site, liking what they see, purchase it, and then you've acquired a customer. That's an acquisition strategy. So on that kind of definition, then a lot of the things like incentivized loyalty, or discounts for referrals, or signing up for email and getting discounts, these are also kind of sitting under we would traditionally in the e-commerce world say these are retention strategies, but really they're probably an incentive for an initial acquisition strategy as well.
But I think actually it's a really interesting point that it's not necessarily, or perhaps the problem with that retention is we've got hung up on retention being all about email and loyalty programs, and I mean to to be a bit provocative, I think there are various vendors out there who are sort of pushing that as like, hey, we're the solution to you brand trying to get profitable, use our tech, and you can still drive revenue without paying money for paid ads, or put it like this, a brand marketing. And that's tempting because ultimately acquisition is a bit of a duopoly with Meta and Google, and maybe TikTok edging in. But the point is, for most brands, it's kind of depressing that they don't have that many options when it comes to acquiring customers online. So it's nice to look at others. But retention is not all about email and loyalty, right? And there are other things you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. You could even use your acquisition strategies to retain more customers by retargeting customers that have bought in an X amount of period of time, for example.
Or perhaps specifically your advertising strategies. I mean, what I think is true, and we found this at Littledata, is that brand marketing is a powerful retention strategy. Like if you have a stronger brand amongst your existing customers, and they're basically they're prompted, they're reminded of you, that's the best way, and you can actually get them on pay. The kind of the super targeted or the discount offers or whatever else you might do, that has some effect, but it has a lot more effect if they actually kind of see you around in your niche you're known.
Yeah, this year I've coined this idea, even for us growing as an agency, around the idea of like noise, unmeasurable noise. And I think that's, we've seen it with our merchants. They start investing in really top of funnel style ads, and suddenly organic search goes up. It's like, hang on a minute, I'm putting my money here, but I'm starting seeing more people searching my brand. And if we were engaging in offline acquisition strategies, then we wouldn't even question it, because we'd say, because obviously somebody's seen my ad on the tube or whatever, and now they're going to go on Google. But it's really strange how, when we're investing into on digital paid media platforms, we tend to be so, segmented on where did that come from.
Yeah.
And I think it's really vital now that we've started thinking about this kind of like, if we want to get technical, a more multi-attribution approach, or just actually saying, right, what can I profitably do to make as much noise as possible?
Yeah.
Taking it kind of back to that retention piece then, but then, we've got a good strategy, we're getting people into the funnel, but now we need to look for the marginal gains to be able to then grow as much as I can with other things. With the people I've got, and make that investment into acquisition work as hard as possible. Like you said, your new integration with Klaviyo, that's going to help people capture more people that have left stuff in the car. Great, that's a marginal gain. Or investing into on-site CRO because it's going to make the traffic perform.
And actually thinking about it, even like targeting abandoned browsers, abandoned carts, I mean, it's a bit arguable whether that's acquisition or retention. To take your previous definition, if it's about getting people to make their first purchase, it's really an acquisition strategy. Retention is really about people who've already bought from you and you want to buy again.
100%. And then I guess you could then segment it down and say, well, what type of traffic is going to be coming to the site? Is it like, people that have always bought? But also I think we can't be, with this kind of discussion, we can't be so segmented and put these blanket rules in, because, if you're a sofa brand, you're not going to be, probably not, but well, I definitely don't. Maybe other people do, but I'm not buying a new sofa every month. I'd like a new sofa.
As a short aside, there was a hilarious program I watched a few years ago about Britain's biggest dog. And this woman who had these Great Danes, she said she literally had to replace her sofas every 3 months because the dogs trashed them. I was like, that is a sofa bill, that's
that. I mean, that's a subscription. I actually saw there's a subscription sofa model out there, so I need to have a look at that. But
I think that's really saving for a sofa, not literally buying a sofa each month. But yeah,
I
get and in front, I know this well because one of the first brands I worked with was Made.com, and they had a very sophisticated acquisition strategy. Not they didn't do any retention, but it's just that, as you say, their purchasing cycle was like 5 to 7 years. So you buy your furniture for your new house, and then you really don't buy again until you move into the new house 5 years later. So that's the reality. So you can email those people as much as you like 3-6 months after purchase, but it doesn't mean they're going to buy anything.
Yeah, no, definitely. But then also, if that same very brand has 1,000 SKUs of loads of auxiliary products that are going to go great, then the retention piece is going to be amazing for them.
That was what Made tried to do, branch into cushions and that kind of thing.
I've got the tea towel and now I've got the sofa, So, but then there is the other side of kind of industry focus where retention is like absolutely paramount. Otherwise, the acquisition strategy falls apart. Where like those, we see it with food and bev and subscription offerings where you're making next to nothing for like a month or so or 2 months. And in these instances, then yes, that everything, the marginal gains might not be so marginal because how much it is to acquire a customer through Meta, Google, TikTok, whatever. But actually, then if you haven't got all of the tech and all of the amazing apps that we see marketed to us relentlessly, if you haven't got that, then actually your acquisition strategy is no point because you can't physically make that customer ever profitable.
And you're right. And I think actually maybe extends to a lot of brands are selling by subscription. Because and I've been banging on this for years. One of the reasons why we work with a lot of subscription merchants and Google Analytics, because you're never going to make money off your first subscription. It's only going to be after month 3 or 4 that you're making you profitable. So the essential thing is that you can track lifetime value back to campaigns and channels. Otherwise, you're really guessing like which channels are bringing profitable customers. And so I think that's, as you say, to take that piece further, we know and Recharge publishes benchmarks on kind of, what is retention every year. I mean, it's as low as 25% annual retention for a kind of food and beverage brand, and as high as I think 55% if you're in like home. I don't know. I guess they mean things like kind of, I don't know, subscription washing powder or whatever. Those are sort of sticky categories because people need it day in, day out. But so ultimately, you do need, if you're a subscription brand, that's a good thing to focus on. But still, beyond a certain level, I would maintain that there's probably not that much more you can wring out of retention. Like, if you're doing the basics.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's so many crossovers between retention and it's like they both need each other in the same way that we always argue. is the high street dead, or is e-commerce dead, or 1 minute the high street's dying, withering away, then e-commerce has gone again. But actually, on our podcast, we spoke with the founder of Finisterre, and he said they both need each other. They really do, because people want to go in and feel, but they also want the convenience of online. And I think that acquisition and retention is absolutely no different, and they both need each other. But and we can use a lot, and like I said, there's a lot of crossover. For example, you might earn loyalty points for referring. Hang on, is this a retention strategy now, or is this an acquisition strategy? Because we're acquiring customers through our existing customer base, increasing the number of visitors we're getting to site.
So perhaps let's just take a step back, because we talked a lot about retention strategies, but what do you think for a kind of e-commerce brand and trading on Shopify, what would be some of the basic stuff? What would be what we call them, the minimal sort of retention stuff you should be doing?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, and it isn't as hard as everyone wants to make out at the moment. You don't need to part with, you don't need to remortgage your house to get these things off the ground. You really don't, because the tech is really good, and anyone can set it up. So I think look at it on a kind of feature or channel basis, first of all. So obviously we spoke a lot about email and SMS. These tools are not rocket science to use. Klaviyo or other tools are really good, and they're really well documented, so you can learn pretty quick on how to set some of these things up. So when it comes to email, firstly, I'm sure you're probably already sending some newsletters out, but take it another step and start being a bit more segmented. If someone's bought this product, maybe don't tell them about the same product they've already bought. Tell them about something that's a bit different. So let's take our newsletters up a level. But then, hey, let's try and let it work for us when we're sleeping, with automation and smart triggers within platforms like Shopify. So setting up some flows, for example, some really good basic ones. So like add to cart abandonment flow, win back. So trying to get people to come back if they've not purchased in the last 6 months, for example. Secondly, then welcome flows to really nurture that initial kind of sign up if somebody just got, and then we can also do some incentives within that. Get those set up, and you can always build, learn, and iterate on what the data is telling you about those. No one's asking you to kind of, oh my God, every product and collection has to have its own very 6-part compartmentalized strategy. It really doesn't. Keep it simple.
I think it's interesting. I've talked to quite a few, we've just launched Klaviyo integration. I'll talk about a bit in a sec, but we talked to a lot of marketers doing email marketing, and actually interesting, one of the one that faults is kind of over segmentation. Like you can overthink it, right? And there's diminishing returns, of particularly if you don't have a huge list, of kind of spinning it up versus just doing more experimentation, creativity with your whole list.
100%. And of course, getting an agency on board, if you're tight for time, you're a growing business, getting an agency on board is going to be great, right? Because you get some fresh minds, experts. But if you're just maybe starting out, or just kind of putting your feet into the water of retention, get started with those basics. I think the next piece is, we talk about like loyalty schemes and loyalty on site. There is literally, Yotpo do a free loyalty plan if you're doing less than 10K orders a month, where you can add their widgets to your site. It might not look like the most beautiful thing that's been painted by Picasso, but it's going to give your customers a slight incentive, and you can start learning about what they respond to and what they don't, and something you might want to push a little bit harder down the line. But then similarly with, so I think that's 2, email and SMS, getting your basics set up. Get a loyalty scheme put into your site. It's not absolutely rocket science to do it. And then finally, I think maybe I'm sure you're probably investing in acquisition strategies already, but maybe look at trialing some more retention-focused campaigns by retargeting people that have already purchased before. Get those 3 things set up, and then learn and iterate. 6 months, right? What's our customer lifetime value now? Lovely GA4 reports gives us that. And compare like for like and year over year. And, but there is this sort of pressure that's like, oh my goodness, panic. It's so hard to acquire. I should have everything retention ticked in the box now. Otherwise our business is going to be dead in the water in about 5 months' time. But it's not the case. It really isn't.
So I just want to come back to that point about, abandoned carts, because I think that's a really powerful strategy for a lot of brands. And if you've got that set up already in a tool like Klaviyo, great. As you say, they make it easy as template flows. I would just, apart from plugging Littledata's integration, and we've got more on that. So I'm just trying to get the things to do. I'd say a couple of things. So the first thing is check that you are actually targeting abandoned carts or abandoned checkout. A lot of the brands we work with are basically using a checkout started event, which means by my maths earlier, you're basically retargeting half the people who actually added to cart. So that's the first basic. Second one is you kind of mentioned like, yes, people think about email targeting and SMS targeting with people. You should do that, but you could also use the kind of smart audiences that Littledata creates or allows you to create in Meta and Google to do the similar thing. So, for example, in Google Analytics, you can just create an audience to people who added to cart but didn't purchase, and then you just export that through to Google Ads. And then, as they move around the web, the ads follow them around. You might find that a bit creepy, but honestly, it works. I think you quoted quite earlier about LinkedIn, like 85% of LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. 85. I was reading a whole article on LinkedIn ads the other day, something we're exploring at the moment, and 85% of all inquiries or real life conversions that come, I'm not talking about clicks, I'm talking about somebody giving you money, will come from the retargeting layer of a LinkedIn ads campaign. So only 15% of people will actually part with their cash when they're looking at an ad for the very first time and they've not clicked it or engaged it or see it before effectively, which says a lot. It means that, I've always had a bit of a bugbear with the way that we attribute sales to channels as well, which you might disagree with me, Ed, but I don't think that attribution windows are very reflective of real life, because I've tracked myself in my own purchase journeys, and honestly, I'm a really slow buyer. I'm a subscriber to Heights. I was looking at that for at least 14 months, but I bet if you looked at their data analytics, they'd say maybe I clicked an ad in the last 7 days and bought, and that was how I was attributed. Yeah. But I think
it's a real challenge, that one. The reason that typically people don't try and do the more than 30-day attribution, just because cookies don't last that long. I mean, Littledata's integration kind of extends it a bit, but it's pretty hard to track people over 12 months. And in fact, that was exactly the problem Made.com used to have, is that if you have a high ticket item, the consideration journey path is obviously a lot longer. So I think in their research, customers had on average 14 touch points before they bought a sofa. So it's really hard to track those 14 touch points over months. And as you say, I think we've all gotten this sort of very kind of direct response paid ads, where, as you say, it's like it's the thing yesterday that brought you to buy, but it's obviously not. And I think that's one of the other things, not just about retention versus acquisition, but also just about paid ad versus brand. Now, I guess as someone who's deeply into measurement of online ads and Google Analytics, maybe this is not what you expect me to say, but I think a lot of brands could reallocate more to some brand marketing that's not paid ads, because I think that the synergies are huge. The response, the actual click-through rate and purchase rate you'll get from online ads is much better if you have some brand awareness. And we've got a great example of that, actually, of a new customer. I won't name the name, but they're very well known, let's say, rapper sponsored footwear brand, and they've been doing, they're probably one of Shopify's top selling merchants over the last month based off a Super Bowl ad. It's not that hard. I get that obviously there's sort of 20 years of fame in the making to get to that level of sort of brand response, but still the point is spending on offline ads does work and can be incredibly effective if you're also spending a lot on online ads.
Yeah, 100%. I was literally also I was speaking to another brand the other day, also can't name names, sorry, it sounds really really arsey, doesn't it? Yeah, so important. Yeah, but I was speaking to a brand the other day, and they were really sharing that they're seeing their meta ads as a real top of funnel, even conversion centric style content, because the attribution window is too long, so they're less bothered, and the way that they're coining it to their CFO and the strategy they're working for is actually this is top of funnel. This is just making people know who we are. So then we're looking at other channels that will drive intent because they've already built the awareness. So, for example, they might use meta ads and macro influencers, so mega famous people, Kardashian level people, to get you will get purchases, but that trust thing's not there because people know that they've just been given millions of pounds to show this product, so that they brand awareness. Yeah, absolutely. But then what they'll then do is then have a really specific micro influencer strategy to then go, I've seen this everywhere. I've seen it on the bus as well. And now my friend who I love and follow is now telling me about it. So I'm now going to buy it. So multi-attribution model. And I think, retention still follows that, right? In terms of that compounding marginal gains over time.
Okay, that's about all we have time for today. It's been a really interesting conversation. So I guess just to wrap up, it's not a versus, it's do both. But don't forget the acquisition, or certainly don't forget the brand marketing as quite a powerful way to drive the retention as well.
Nailed it.
Thank you, Nick, for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.